In today's hot takes, we've seen insider information on the part of congressmen and women be a big issue, especially also at the Fed when it comes to individuals trading on some of that information. Yesterday, House Speaker Nancy Pelosi was asked about that in her weekly press conference. Just want to play the question she was asked and her response when it comes to whether or not people with insider information in government should be trading. Take a listen.
Insider just completed a 5-month investigation finding that 49 members of Congress and 182 senior congressional staffers have violated the Stock Act, the insider trading law. I'm wondering if you have any reaction to that, and secondly, should members of Congress and their spouses be banned from trading individual stocks while serving in Congress?
No, I don't know to the second one. We have a responsibility to report in the stock, on the stock, but I'm not familiar with that 5-month review, but if people aren't reporting, they should be. Because this is a free market and we're a free market economy. They should be able to participate in that.
So a lot of people, Akiko, taking issue with that, specifically the last part there, a free market economy, people should be able to participate in that, congressmen and women do have pretty important information. You think back to what happened at the beginning of the pandemic when some sales were made around what information was gleaned from some security conferences within Congress about how serious it was, especially when congressmen were saying to the public that everything was fine. So, I mean, there are clearly conflicts around some of this and people not happy with that response.
Yeah, those trades you're talking about right before we saw that market crash at the beginning of the pandemic. A lot of Republican lawmakers were out front saying this is no big deal. But behind the scenes, we later learned that they had, in fact, sold their stock. It's important to note, there are rules in place. There's the Stock Act that was passed in 2012 that essentially says that lawmakers need to disclose the sale of stock or purchases within 45 days, as well as their spouses, too. It's just that the Business Insider story specifically pointed out that those disclosures aren't happening right now. That story specifically noted about 50 lawmakers, senior congressional staffers as well. But even if they did disclose, even if there was a violation right now, we're talking about a slap on the wrist, $200. Is the fine here. So there is an argument to be made that, potentially, especially with what happened at the Fed and 2 regional Fed presidents resigning on the back of these disclosures, that they did, in fact, buy into the market, too, whether these rules need to be revised for lawmakers. Interesting tweet coming through on the back of Nancy Pelosi's comments, though, from the former director of the U.S. Office of Government Ethics. And I want to see if we can pull that one up, because he says specifically, it's a ridiculous comment. She might as well have said, let them eat cake. Sure, it's a free market economy, but your average schmuck doesn't get confidential briefings from government experts chock full of non-public information directly related to the price of stocks. And that really is the key in terms of the concerns that have been raised. It's that a lot of lawmakers have access to material information that aren't necessarily available to the general public that allows them to trade a little more with insight. And the question is whether, in fact, they should be allowed to hold individual stocks.
Yeah, and to be honest, I mean, a lot of, I think, what we've seen this year in terms of crypto being a big storyline here is tied to exactly that. I mean, we've talked a lot about, SPACs and SEC rules around some of these listings and the way that some of these, accredited investors can invest in some of these companies that are private and things like that. And crypto kind of, opens up the door where almost anyone can get in on the ground floor. And obviously, it opens up some potential scams there, too. But also, it kind of addresses some of the issues raised by this, kind of getting rid of insider information around it and allowing anyone to invest. So I think that that's a very interesting. We talk about democratizing finance so much that this is one of those key elements where it was a strange response because, as you said, disclosing is just kind of the beginning of it. Doesn't necessarily mean that you're not still also profiting off that insider information too. And so I don't know, it's a messy thing to get into and something that I have enjoyed watching people on Twitter kind of track these sales. And I think one tracking her own investments actually got shut down by Twitter, at least momentarily. So very interesting to see the spotlight now turned against her.
Yeah, I mean, this is not Republican or Democratic. I mean, this is an issue that we've seen across party lines here. So we'll see if there's a review here with that Stock Act.